Hello everybody, welcome on in here to our user group webinar. Today I'm coming to you live on a sunny day here in Columbus, Ohio. Unseasonably warm, we're loving it. Welcome on in here everybody. My name is Jim. I'll be leading our webinar today where we're going to be covering emailing donation statements. So we've got 20 minutes to cover this topic, so we'll be kind of scooting through all of the things involved and some details with emailing out of the Church Windows program, the donation statement report to all of your members. Before we get rumbling here, a quick note about your GoToWebinar control panel. You have that on your screen there. It's got a small red button with an arrow on it that you can use to either minimize or maximize that control panel. Minimizing the control panel opens up a little more space here on your monitor to see the stuff we're talking about here as we go through our webinar. Maximizing it gives you access to the different tools available there on that control panel. For this webinar, I have included a handout, which is a PDF document that I'm going to be working from for our webinar here, covering emailing donation statements. So underneath handouts on your control panel, you'll see that donation DON emailing statements PDF that you can click on to download. You can print it and keep it for after the webinar is over, or refer to it as we go through our session here today. You're also going to have a section in there for questions. I've been joined today by Ross, who's going to be monitoring the questions as we go through our topic here today. So if you have any general type of questions regarding emailing your donation statements, feel free to go ahead and type those in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started taking a look at this stuff. In the Church Windows program, in the donations module, which I'm going to go ahead and open up here, you can print your donation statements. This is a long-time feature of our Church Windows program. Just recently, we have included the ability to email these statements. So when you click on the donation statement button here, it takes you to this first window. I'm just going to go ahead and click next. It's going to be everybody who gave for the 2015 year. When you come to this grid, there are two columns that you're going to see going down your list. Here is the list of all of the donation statements that you can print based on your search criteria. And there is a second column here for all of the statements you can email. So when you look at this window, you'll see a series of checkboxes, or oftentimes you'll see a series of checkboxes for folks that you can email a statement to. You'll see some of them listed as none, like this. You'll see some of them listed as invalid, like this. So the rest of them, you'll have a little checkbox, which means that you have an email address on record for that giving unit, either the individual or the family. So the first thing we want to talk about is how to get those emails associated with those giving units. So there's two different sources where you're going to have folks on this list here. They're either records from your membership module, or they're donation records that you have here in the donation module. So in terms of folks from the membership module, you should have a field over in membership called email or work email or something like that that you assign to folks over in membership. In order to assign email addresses to records in the donations module, there's two places that this can be done. The most common way you're going to do this is under the Special Functions tab here along the top of the screen. If you go to the Settings button there, you're going to see on the Settings window down towards the bottom here where it's got your mass assign email field from the membership module. You may have more than one email address field over in membership assigned. If I click on my down arrow here, you'll notice that we have a field called email address over in membership. We have another one called other email. When you use this feature and you click on email address, for example, in this example here, what it's going to do, well, actually, I'm going to switch it so you'll see what it looks like. You'll get a window that looks like this that says change all membership givers that currently have no default email. What it basically is doing is assigning the information that they have in that field over in membership to their record here in donations. By default, donations is not going to be smart enough to know which email field to use in that donation statement report. So you're telling donations which of those fields you want to use. In our database, we're using the email address field. So this is the place under special functions and settings where you can assign a particular field to everyone. If you need to change it, so for example, if somebody has some data in the other email field that you want to use, you can assign individually by going to the Manage Givers window, which is right here. This one on your opening donations window right there. So if I launch this, there are if I select, for example, Jan Adams's record here, if I come over to the Contacts tab along the top, right there, that's where you can see which field is being used for that record. Email statements too, in this case, email address. If I wanted this assigned to the other email account, I could also select other email here. So whatever they have in that field will now be used when you send email statements. Okay. In the case of a family that shares a giver number, you'll see like the Albrecht family down here, Bill and Susan. Notice they both have giver number 64 associated with their record. If I come over here to contacts, you'll notice that that's grayed out. That means that the email address that it will use if multiple people in the same family use the same email address is the person who is coded as primary using the directory report order field over in membership. So whoever the primary person is, that's the email account that is going to be used to send the email statement. Okay? So that's how emails from membership get assigned to this feature. For donations givers, actually, I should have left myself open on here. So if you have a particular donations giver, like Carolyn Ames here, this is a donations giver. When you come over here to contacts, you'll see that from here, you can actually assign the email address from the contacts tab. You can enter their email address from there. Okay, so if you come to a donations giver, go to the Contacts tab. If they do not already have an email account associated with them, you would click on this green plus button over here to the right, this button right here, and you could then assign them an email address. That's for donations givers. Once the email addresses are assigned to givers in donations, the next step is to connect your Church Windows program to the email account that you will be sending your emails, your donation statements from. Church Windows as a program is not a database or a program that has its own email account associated with it. Much like Microsoft's Outlook program, you have to take this program and hook it into an existing email account that you'll then use to send your emails from. You hook Church Windows into an email account using what's called SMTP, which is a transport language, which stands for Simple Mail Transport Protocol. So any email account that you want to use Church Windows with has to have an SMTP connection associated with it. Let me show you where this is set up in the program. If I open up my donation statement button right here, this, by the way, is one of the more sort of technically demanding and complex things that we have in Church Windows. Once this is all hooked up, it works like a charm, but there is a few hurdles to cover first. From the donation statement window, the Step 2 window, there's a tab along the top that says Email right here, and that's where you set all of this up. So when I click on this tab, you'll see in the upper left-hand corner, it'll say Email Setting up there. We already have one set up in our training data here for convenience, but when you're setting up a new email account to hook Church Windows into, you would be clicking on this green plus button right here. Right there. Boom, boom, that guy. But I'm going to click on the little yellow pencil button so we can edit the settings that we already have, and we'll talk through the things that are on this window. Here is our Setup SMTP email window. Now, by the way, if you're not sure about your SMTP settings for your email account, you would want to contact either your system administrator there at the church if you have a technician that works on your emails or works on your computers over there. They may well know. Or you may want to contact your internet service provider. If you have like a local company that set up a domain for you and your emails are through them, you'll want to talk to those folks, call them up, and ask them about the SMTP settings for their server. In the case of this email account that we're using for our training data here, we are using a Gmail account. Outgoing mail server is the thing that you set up here at the top. The first thing you do is you give it a display name at the very top here. So that's just sort of the title of the settings that you're going to use for your email account. But then after that, the next thing you're going to do is set up the outgoing mail server. If I click on this edit button, here are the components of one of those servers. First is the address. This is a named address that represents that computer out on the internet. In this case, it's smtp.gmail.com. This is the Gmail servers out on the internet that host all of these Gmail accounts. Below this is where you set up your security settings, which includes whether or not you're using SSL security for these connections, and the port number you may be using. Now, the Gmail settings here can be found easily enough if you just go search for it on the internet. You just open up a web browser and search for SMTP Gmail, and you'll be able to find these settings. So the Gmail servers use port number 587. They use explicit SSL. You enter this information into this window. Server timeout, you're going to leave it 0. But if you have trouble with connections, you may want to increase the server timeout. This is the amount of time between each email that Church Windows sends. So it may take, if by default it's going to send them one after the other very quickly, but if your email account doesn't support it being sent that quickly, you can set this for a timeout of up to 5 seconds between each email. But usually you'll set it to 0, as we see here. Once you've got these SMTP settings entered into your system, you'll use the Perform Connection test window below that. This is Church Windows testing whether or not it can communicate with this server out on the internet. If all of these settings are correct and your computer is on the internet, you'll get a message that says the connection test was successful. That just means that Church Windows is able to talk to that email server out on the internet. Cool, your button turns green. We're all set to go to connect to that server. The next thing you're going to do is put the information about the actual email account that you have at that server into the system. So that's what you do in the from email address settings right here, this from email address right here. If we look at ours, I'll click on the edit button. You enter in the email address itself. We've got a Church Windows email test at gmail.com account, the name of your organization. So the name of the organization name, when they receive the email with the donation statement, that's what's going to be listed in the from box for that email. So these emails will arrive in your members' inboxes listed by what's here under name or organization name. So you enter that information. Then you must put in the password associated with that email account. So you have to have a valid email server. You must have an email account that's stored with that server, and you must know the password associated with your email account. Once these things are entered, by the way, you can have a different reply to email. So like if the person who receives the email clicks the reply button, you can have it reply somewhere other than your email that you sent it from. It's going to default to the same email address, but you can change it if you need to. Normally, you don't mess with this reply to at all. But once all of these things are set up, you click on your Send Test Email button. This is to make sure that not only can Church Windows hook into that SMTP server, but it can also access the email account that you want to use. So this is where you put in the email address you want to send this test email to. If everything is set up properly on this window, you'll get this message. You should receive an email at this email address. Okay, so then you go and you look at your email account that you sent the test email to, and you can receive that email there. Once this is done successfully, you're now ready to use the donation statement email features. Before we move on to that, just really quickly, I just want to let you guys know this is there are a whole bunch of things that can go a little bit sideways on you outside of your building with your internet service provider or with your internet connection or any number of things here. Normally this is going to hook right up for you and you're going to be off and running, but you know, it can a little bit of patience with this part of the process sometimes is needed because getting it connected up sometimes you got to jump through some hoops. Okay. Once you do have it set up, you're then going to be able to send your email statements. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to send an email to each of those folks. It's going to have an attachment, which is a PDF document of their donation statement attached to that email. And it's going to send that statement to each of these individuals when we do this. The thing you have to set up first is this global email message at the top here. You have to actually format the email that they're going to receive first. So if you click on the button you will click on to create a new one is this button that looks like a little piece of paper right here. That's how you compose your new global email message. Okay. Clicking here, it takes you into the global email message, the email subject. You type it in. This is what's going to appear in the subject line of their email. Your donation statement. That's going to be in the subject line of their email. You can also type in some information that's going to go into the body of the email. This is not going to appear on the statement itself. Remember, the donation statement is going to be a PDF document that's attached to this email. Whatever you need to type in here, you can. When you've got all of this filled in properly, you can click on your Add button. Oh. You click on your Add button here. It'll show you that. Notice you can have multiple formats here that you can use. It saves them. If you click on the down arrow, you'll see multiple formats here. But then, now you're able to send this email. So the most common question here, when you're ready to send them, when you're on this screen, by the way, if there's a check mark under the print column, it's going to print a hard copy of that statement. If you have a check mark in the email column, it is going to send an email to that person. So you could go through your list here and kind of check who you want to send the email to and go through it in that way, one at a time. But a lot of folks want to know how you can just email it to everybody who you have an email account for, and then print the statement if they don't have an email address. So that's commonly the way you're going to do this on here. The way in which you will do that, and this is going to be the last thing we're going to have time to cover here today, unfortunately, is where you're going to select up here where it says on selected, check email, and you're going to make sure you use this checkbox here. Check print if no email address. That's the thing you need to look at up at the top. So I'm going to go on selected, check email, check print if no email address. Now, once those are selected at the top, down here at the bottom, you're going to uncheck print for all right here to remove the check marks from all the print column. It takes all of those check boxes out. Then you're going to use the check email for all button, which is this one right here. When it does that, it's going to put check marks in all of the email boxes, but if there is no email, it's going to put a check mark in the print box. So if I click this, as you go down your entire list here, you'll see if there is an email address, it'll check that, like Jan here. But for Angela Altoff here, for example, you'll notice that it'll check print if they don't have an email address on record. All that stuff being in place and ready to rumble, all you need to do is click the button at the bottom here where it says print/email statements. Right there, that button down there. I'm not going to do that in this webinar because this is training data and these aren't all valid email addresses that we have on record here. But when you click on this print/email statements, it's going to give you a progress bar where it's going to go through your list. You'll see each individual email as it sends it. It does it one at a time. It doesn't send it in one giant email with a blind carbon copy, for example. Everybody on this list gets their own separate email with their statement attached to it. And then once the emails are finished being sent, then it will take you to the print preview window where you can print the hard copies for everybody else's statement that you don't have an email for. And then you can click on the print button at the top. It ends up showing, just uncheck the email boxes. So when I click this button, it'll take, once the emails are done being sent, it'll take you to the print preview window, which will look like this, depending on the statement format you have selected. And you can click on your print button at the top to print these out, 2 pieces of paper. Cool. All right, so that's all the time I have today. Big topic. Remember, you've got your handout that you have available in your GoToWebinar control panel. Thank you so much for joining me here, everybody. If you're all set to go on with your day, feel free to click on the X in the upper right-hand corner of your GoToWebinar control panel. That will exit you out of the room here today. Thanks for joining me. For everybody who's cutting out of here, if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and type those in now. I'm going to leave the room open for a little bit if anybody has any questions. So thanks for joining me, everybody.